What do you think about this beautiful two-piece made from Ankara? It's so gorgeous for your baby girl, right? So this outfit looks big in this video, but it's actually for a 2 years old. Hi, my name is Timi Kemza James. You're welcome back to my channel, and for those who are seeing me for the first time, you're welcome. Don't forget to subscribe and like as I bring you this tutorial, right? So I'm going to be dividing this into two sections. One is the pants, and then I'll make the blouse in another video where I'm going to be posting also. So the first thing I'm going to do is to go ahead and iron down my fabric. So I'm working with this gorgeous Ankara piece, which is actually scrap fabric, or it was the hair tie of from a previous project, which I'm going to be putting a picture up here in case you've not seen that one as well. So for the trouser, I'm folding it in half and I gave it a good press. Then I'm going ahead to mark my waistline, then the distance from my waist to my hip, then the distance from the hip to the crouch, and then to the knee. So this is waist, knee, hip, crouch, and knee, right? So I'm going ahead to rule it according to waist, hip, crouch, then knee. Then the next thing I'm going to be doing is to mark 1 inch all the way, and then I'll be drawing the 1 inch all the way down, right? That's going to serve as my sewing allowance. So whatever I'm going to do, I'll start doing it away from the 1 inch, or starting from the 1 inch mark, right? So I don't know if you can see these lines clearly, but that was the best chalk I could use that sort of showed on the fabric. So now on the hip line, I'm going to be marking half of a quarter of my hip measurement. Then on the crouch line, I'm marking half of my lap measurement. On the hip is a quarter of the hip measurement, and on the crouch is half of the lap measurement, right? So by the time I do that, I'm going to find half of what I have on the lap measurement. That's what I'm going in with on the, forget that line that I just made now, right? So I'll find half of this that I placed on my crouch measurement, and then I'll mark it on the knee measurement. So by the time I do that, I'll do the same thing for the hem of the pant, but before then I'll mark my lap measurements, or my knee measurements, or my knee point, like centralizing them from the center. So half of whatever half of my knee measurement, right, will be what I'm going to be using, but half of it will go to starting from the midpoint towards the other side, and the other half to this other extreme, right? That's what I marked. Then I'll do the same thing for my ankle as well. I'll go ahead and mark half of whatever I want to use for my ankle, starting from the midpoint towards the right, and then from the midpoint to the other extreme. Then I'm going ahead to mark my waist measurement, right? So my waist is going to be a quarter of my waist, just like I had that of my hip as well. Then I'll mark that, and then I'm going to mark my sewing allowance to extend into the 1 inch. Then for my hip as well, I'll extend my sewing allowance, and then I'll join my knee measurement to the length of the pants, and then back to the hip. Then I'll just go ahead and trace off my sewing allowance, which I'm using around 3/4 of an inch, and then I'll connect the inner thigh side as well, from the knee to the ankle, and from the ankle to the crouch measurements. Then I'll go ahead and cut that out. Now as I'm cutting on the center front, that curved area, right, I'm going to go ahead and add half of an inch for sewing allowance. I don't know if I mentioned when I marked that crouch curve, but I guess you saw me. So I'll go ahead and cut that out, and then this will be the front of my pants, right? Now I'll fold another fabric again, and then I'll give it a nice press. Now I'm maintaining the design on the print, right? So don't forget that. So I'll lay the front on this new fabric that I have, and I'll extend the crouch area by 1.5, and I'll also add sewing allowance on the inner thigh, which I used 1 inch. Now when lying your fabric, you leave about 1.5 inch on the upper side, that's the waist side. So what I have on the waist side, I'm going to put the same thing but in a slant to meet the 1.5 inch mark, and I trace my curve from the crouch line that I extended all the way to that point. You're adding that 1.5 inch on the waist upward so that it accommodates the bum of the child, right? So I just go ahead and cut out whatever I have on the back right now. So just when you look at how I'm cutting, it becomes a little bit more clear to you. Now when I'm done, here is my front and my back piece together, so you can see the difference is actually that the back is bigger than the front, and is the back, the center back is like it has a longer part there. Now on the front side, I'll just mark 6 inches down and make a notch there. That's actually going to be for my zipper, for my pocket, sorry. So I have this paper stay which I'm going to be using to sort of stiffen. It's not compulsory, but it does help with the overall look of the pocket, right? So I'm going to place it on the wrong side like so, and I'll give it a nice press so that it sits nicely. Now you can as well just a little, it doesn't even have to be that big, right? You can just have like 1 inch wide or 1.5 inches will still work as well. So when you're done pressing it, I'm going to measure 2 inches from the waist inside, right? Cut out any excesses that you have, and then I'll do the same thing. I'll just cut out that notch again so that I can see. Then I'll mark 2 inches inwards on the waist, and I'll curve it on that 2 inch point to meet the notched part. Then I'll give it a good press, right? So I'll flip my fabric and then I'll do the same thing on this other side. By the time I'm done, this is what it looks on the inside and outside. Now I'll just grab some extra fabric and I'll fold it like so in half, and I'll just cut that. I'll iron it nicely and cut that out. That's what I'm going to be using for my waistband. So after folding, you want to have something around 2.5 inches, so which will be a total of 5 inches if you open it, and then the length should be as wide as what you need. Now I cut out this lining piece that I'm going to be using 10 by 10 for my pocket, and then I would just cut out these pieces. Now this is just scrap fabric I'm just cutting out to support the pockets, the pocketing, so it's going to be showing, right? One part is going to be showing. You see what I mean later. So I'm just attaching it to my pocketing, or the lining I'm using as pocketing. So one will be opposite the other, so that, because we have two sides of the front, so that's what I'm doing, right? So now I'll just grab one of the front panels, and then that place where I folded in half, I'll open it and I'll try to find the pocketing that matches it. So I'll grab the one that when you place it this way, it sort of matches like this, right? So when I discover that this is the one that works well, I'll flip it over, and then I'm going to sew on that, just close to that crease line, right? I'll sew on top of it, and then I would maintain that notch even on the pocketing. Now I'll open it and lie that excess triangle we have there. I'll fold a little bit of it inside, and I'll top stitch on top of the pocketing. Make sure everything is lined nice and clean, right? So I'm trying to push in all the raw sewing allowances in. You don't have to like push it in if you went ahead to overlock your pants, but have not overlocked mine yet. That's why I'm using it like that. Now I'll fold that in half and lie this like this. Then that 2 inches that I folded on the main fabric, I'll make sure I have it on that pocketing. So that is why you have the main fabric on top of the pocket, so that it covers that place, right? So I'll just sew it down. then I'll make a top stitch on top of this side a little. That's at the hem of the ending of the pocket, right? Then I'll raise the leg of the trouser, make a notch, a long notch. It's a little bit long. Put my hands in the pocket and bring out the pocket, right? Then I'll match that notches that I made. Then I would sort of make the shape of pockets that I want from there, back stitching from beginning to the end. I'll make the shape of my pocket, then I'll trim off any excesses that I have. Then I'm going to tuck the pocket back in. Then for extra security, so that you don't lose things from the pocket, I'm going to be top stitching on top of that seam line, right? Just for extra security. By the time I'm done top stitching, I'll go ahead and my pocket is ready. Then I'll go ahead and do the same thing to the other side of the trouser, right? So look at what it looks like. You can see the pocket. I can dip my hands inside of it. So now I've done the both pocket, and then I'm trying this out with her biscuits. You can see that the pant is actually for my knees, so you can see the biscuit fits into the pant. Then I'll sew the center front together using that 1/2 inch sewing allowance that I left. I'll go ahead and stitch that all the way to the curve, and then that will be the front side. Trousers are so easy to make, guys. If you just know how to cut them, they are easy. Now by the time I'm done with the front, I'll bring the back. On the center back, I'm going to join that together, and I'll sew all the way to the curve as well. That's the crouch curve. So I'll go ahead and finish sewing back stitch. Then I'll open it, and then I'll join the sides of the front and the back together. Now I'm just matching the sides like so. I usually like sewing from the legs coming up to the waist. Even when I'm sewing skirt, I prefer doing it like that because everything aligns better when you sew it like this, right? So I'm using 3/4 of an inch instead of the 1 inch that I used, because I do not want the pants to be tight on the girl at all. So I'm using 3/4 of an inch to join my pants together. So by the time I get to the waist, I back stitch, and then I'll do the same thing on the other side. Now by the time I'm done, you can see the inner thigh is still open. So before I join the inner thigh, I'll go ahead and double fold like this, iron it down, and put my hemming gum. Then I'll bring it back to sew. So I'm done doing that now. I'm going to go ahead and top stitch to hold the seam, the double fold. You don't even have to do this if you used hemming gum, but I'm just doing it for extra security because it's a child. I'll do the both legs before I come back to do the inner thigh. Now for the inner thigh, I'll just join it like this, starting from the leg as well. Then I'll go ahead and make sure I'll sew it using 1/2 of an inch sewing allowance. Then I'll make sure that the crouch seam lines matches each other before I continue. On that point is prone to tearing, so I'll back stitch on that point, or if you like, you can double stitch, right, for extra security. And I match my legs. Then I would go ahead and sew, and the body of the pant is done. So let's head to the waistband. Now for the waistband, I just grabbed elastic that is 1 inch wide, and I'm going to cut out about, her waistline is 20 inches, but I'm making it 18 inches. If I had worked with 17, I think it would have been better. It would have been more snug on her waist, but even the 18 was fine. I'll just join the waistband together like this, back stitch properly, and then I open my sewing allowance on the waistband and stitch it down so that everything is nice and flat. And then you want to have it like a rounded shape like this, so that you can go ahead and join it with ease. So now I'll grab the waistband, and then I'll match one right side of the waistband to the wrong side of the fabric, leaving about 1 inch of the waistband without sewing it down, right? So I'll go ahead and start joining the waistband to the waist. I'm going to go ahead and do the same, sew it down all the way close to where I started sewing the waistband. Now when I get close, I'm going to trim off the excesses, then I'll take it out of the machine, cut my thread, then I match that 1 inch that I told you that I left. I'll match it like so that I can join the waistband to be rounded as well. You know, it was a straight material, so I'll just go ahead and sew it like this, right side facing each other. Then I'm sewing, and the sewing allowance is sitting on the wrong side, right? So I'll trim off the excesses, and then I'll open back my waist, and then I'll sew and close any opening that I have there. Now when I'm done doing that, I'll come back to fix the elastic. Now for the elastic, I'm just going to put it inside the waistband on the wrong side. Then at the back side is where I'm putting where the elastic has joining, and I top stitch on it very close to the seam that joins the waistband to the pant. Then I double fold whatever I have left, and I'm going to top stitch. Now when I'm double folding, it's going to face the right side of the pant, right? So I'm going to top stitch, and I'll just carefully be drawing it, because you know the waistband is a little bit smaller than her waist. So I'll just lie it properly and make sure that whatever I'm bringing down covers my raw sewing allowance that is outside. And I'll be dragging the waistband a little bit, just a little pulling here and there, so that everything meets each other. And I'll top stitch all the way to the end. By the time I'm done, I went ahead to give it a nice press, and this is what the pants looks like. You can see the pocket is so beautiful, guys. This turned out so great, and because I was dealing with a little fabric, I had to, that's why you see one line of that pocketing looks different, right? So this is how wearing the outfit, and the video tutorial for the two-piece is coming up next, so stay tuned. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, share this video with your friends, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get notified whenever I have a new video up on the channel. Bye.